Hello again. I know. Mute button's off. I know.
Have to remember to unmute.
Yep.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. Welcome to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files. A series for anyone who manages people, projects, processes, places, things, stuff, cats, who knows. For a living, I am Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
And I am Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk, and welcome to another episode of our series where Sharon and I explore project topics, leadership topics, management topics from the perspective of what not to do. And each episode, we talk about the common pitfalls, share personal stories and experiences, and explore strategies and best practices to help you to be successful.
In this episode, we are talking about the mistake of aiming to win,
Air quotes, win
at any cost, and the impacts of this approach to negotiation and projects, work, general, whatever, can have on the culture, morale of your team, not to mention your partners and customers.
And as somebody who is, kind of competitive, and I kind of ingrained that into my children as they were growing up too. Like it was a favorite thing where I would be like, it said my daughter and then her three brothers, I would say like get home, and my daughter's the oldest, and be like, yeah, I wonder who can clean up the rooms the fastest. And the boys ran up the stairs. And my daughter, she was about 12, and she's like, ha ha, Dad. Like, I know what you're doing there. I'm like, wow, you're going to let your brothers win? And I walk away till I was out of her sight. And then I hear her run up the rest of the stairs, like right into it. So very much got them. And then she was very proud of the fact that she was first to clean up her room. So, but also, I mean, as people who two of us have strong personalities, we're driver type personalities. I know we've both fallen into this trap, and I feel lucky in my early career, and I've shared some of those examples. I had some experiences and made some mistakes that I was able to learn from those mistakes. Not that I didn't repeat them to some degree, but not as messy as I made things early on. While I was young, could still recover. So I was in my early to mid 20s, made a couple mistakes because I was I was pushing forward. I'll just point out that I delivered on time, on budget, great praise from the clients, but I burned so many bridges from my team in IT. Those are where the lessons were learned. It was not about the project so much as how I did the project that mattered.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because like you have the people who have done the things and learned the lessons, and then you have the people who either never had to deal with that, like everything just kind of came easy, and so they didn't really ever have to like learn a lot of hard lessons, or the things happened and they never learned the lessons. They just kept doing the same thing over and over and over and over.
That's called a reputation. You get a reputation. Yeah.
And often and we know the people who end up doing that, where they just, they don't learn their lesson, and so they keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. And unfortunately they just burn bridges, and, and we all know kind of how that goes.
I just made the joke. It's like, it's in my repertoire of dad jokes, but you brought up, if you're a fan of The Office, the American version of that, there's the win-win-win scenario, not just the win-win where both sides of an agreement, but win-win-win where you win, I win, everybody wins. That's the ideal situation. But it's somehow that's better somehow by having the extra win. And so sometimes if I ever hear
I can get a win-win-win-win. So there.
That's true. But if I hear somebody use the phrase, hey, that's a win-win, and I'll do like this, a joke from a gag from the show, that episode is, I'll throw in another under breath, like win, just another extra win.
Wow. Well, yeah. The key here, the important part of this is to really understand the impact of your negotiating techniques, and more importantly, the impacts of the decisions that you're making. So what are you trying to accomplish? How are you getting there? What's happening when you do that? And not just what am I getting out of it, or what is the achievement that's happening, but what's being impacted along the way as well. Because I agree, Christian. I mean, neither of us are type A achiever type personalities at all.
No, of course not. No.
And so, I can tell you, like growing up, I definitely had some similar life experiences. I have 4 younger brothers. And so I definitely have some life experiences when I was young, and learned how to kind of like cool it a little bit, because I, tended to be a little loud and a little bossy and a little pushy. I know that's shocking. And, I've had to learn some of those life lessons and some of those skills to kind of get out of that. But at the end of the day, I don't, it's not, winning is not bad. We praise people who are Olympiads, and we praise people who win competitions, and we praise people who are the best in their fields. And that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
What you're talking about is setting a goal and then literally ignoring the things around you, the things in your path, your own health, whatever, to get to a point that you achieve the thing that you set.
Right. Well, it's again, I think part of this is like, do you have a culture where people feel like to succeed, to move up, to be, recognized, that you have to be that hero approach out there doing it, that you're gladiators rather than a team working together on those things. I think that's the difference.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a great one.
Should be a great conversation. Again, there's a different, that's one of the great things about having a conversation versus like writing an article, is we can go down those kind of tangent paths.
Lots of tangents.
Lots of squirrel. Yeah. As with every episode, please feel free to comment throughout the episode, share your experiences, provide us with feedback, go out and sign up for our newsletter down on the website at projectfailurefiles.com. You can actually comment, leave, some words of advice, a topic you'd like us to cover, something that we said, if we insulted you, hurt your feelings. Again, we just talked about last week, avoiding conflict. We may eventually respond to those angry notes, but, we'll see. Of course, right away, we will handle it. We will embrace the difficult questions, but
we'll need to think about it first.
Yeah, of course. Yes. So, yeah, I guess let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
So what do you think? I mean, how would you frame this? I mean, what does it mean to win in your mind a negotiation in from a project management project context?
From a project management context, I think when we talk about winning, we talk about winning a negotiation. We talk about winning something. It's the idea of getting your way, right? It's what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is the goal that you set for yourself? What is the thing that you want out of this particular conversation or discussion or plan or meeting? At the end of it, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And what are you willing to do to get there? I think it's kind of a mix of those things.
It's having run like cross-functional governance bodies and project management organizations, PMOs, and project teams, and kind of all those things. You're going to get conflict. So whether it's like 2 of your project managers that are battling out because both want this kind of new project that is going to be high profile and exciting and kind of whatever the things. And sometimes people feel like, hey, I'm getting into this rut or the direction of the types of projects. I'm really good at them, but I need to expand and do things. And so they kind of go head to head. So there's a lot of competition with peers in that thing. People that want to move up, there's competition, things around them. I found myself saying again and again, this is like 25 years ago, I started saying this, but it's like doing the timeout, same team, folks, like reminding people, what are we trying to accomplish here? And, and so again, kind of framing the discussion, what's really at point here? Is there a disagreement on an approach? Is it a disagreement that's personality driven? Is there some other factor, fighting for budget or time or resources, the normal project management battles? So looking at what makes sense long-term for the team, for the organization, for the company, and framing it that way. This does, it really mirrors a lot of what we discussed last week with, conflict resolution and, and avoiding conflict. Like, I think we're left off, like my big takeaway from that, my call to action for people is to take a look at frameworks for discussion. Sometimes can be very helpful in this to again identify. You might be on the right side of it, leading the pack there, but burning bridges, causing damage behind you. You're winning, but at what cost is the winning, long term?
Well, and back to the sports ball analogy, and I use this all the time when I work with teams, no matter whose team it is it's very easy for us to understand it when we talk about analogies like any sort of playing a ball game, because, for example, in football, we know that the goal for the team is to get the ball across the line, right? That's the goal. Now, how you get the ball across the line is part of the game. There are rules to what you can do and what you can't do. Everybody doesn't have to get along, but maybe they shouldn't hurt each other. Maybe they shouldn't trip their own teammates. Maybe they should pass the ball to the person who can run the furthest, right? There are dynamics within all of that are then built into that playbook and built back into that conflict resolution, right? If you're not getting along with your teammates, maybe you're not going to get the ball across the line as often. And I think when we transition that same analogy back into the world of, project management, process management, product management, we lose sight of what it is we're trying to do, because it's not as simple as watching a ball go to the other side of the field. There's all these things that are happening along the way. And so I think the key to this is really to remember and understand that what we're talking about is, if you think about it in terms of getting the ball across the field, what is it taking you to get the ball from here to here? And who are you hurting along the way to make that happen?
Yeah, I get the conflict, a personal team level of those things. Like we're hired, things are getting really cutthroat, can be in a lot of industries, where the outcomes, that delivering results is number one. If you want to keep your job, a lot of organizations go and cut back. I mean, I certainly know that. I've been in technical marketing and product and project roles, and it's just in areas of the business where when belt tightening happens, the market suffers it all. Like, I'm in the organizations that get cut first. And so
I have such a good story for this when you're done.
But I do want to say that before you tell your story, when you said at the beginning of that last segment, you said the sports ball analogy, I thought you were going to do like one of those funny generic sports analogies where you then refer to the squad team. So it's like I like the sports. I
like the sports. Yeah. How is the sports ball team doing?
Yes. Yay, team squad.
No, I was just
thinking, in our city.
So I was in technical support early in my career, as one does. Yeah. Didn't we all start in support at some point in our career? And I remember, when we talk about, what do you have to do to win? And one of the things that happened for a little while is they started focusing on call quantity. And one of the things that they wanted was how many problem resolutions could you get in a day? And so they created this contest where basically whoever could get through the most calls, every day would win an award. And then they started every week. We had like a big chart on the side of the wall, and it said who the leaders were and everything. Yep. And we had several people on, and there was like 12 teams. And we had several people on a couple of teams that would literally, as soon as the call would come in, they would drop the call. They would wait a certain amount of time. They would wait like 60 seconds. They would put them on hold or whatever, and then they would drop the call. And they did that over and over and over and over and over so that their call quantity would go up. And then 9 times out of 10, those people would call back. They'd get a different person that would help them. They would solve their problem. So we didn't know originally that was happening. And ultimately what ended up happening is after a few weeks of this, some of the customers started being like, I've been getting dropped from a lot of calls lately. And somebody researched it and found out that's what's happening. But when we talk about what does it take to win and what are you doing, we work in an industry where it's very, very easy to do things like drop the call or not call somebody back or, fudge things, in terms of documentation or reporting or whatever to make things appear to be a certain way. And that can cause all kinds of problems that maybe you're winning in this moment, but ultimately you're creating a lot of problems for the company at large.
Yeah. I know it's again, having been through like these kinds of situations, there's a number of just real world stories that pop up around this. And I just remember one time where I was working with a very headstrong, fellow manager, a peer. And so went and sat down and just said, okay, look, like we're having some conflicts in between, the teams and some of our PMs and analysts around things. Like, what's the best approach here? What can we do? We're wasting time. We're losing, we're struggling. Like the leadership sees what's going on between our teams, and you and I are going to get blamed for our teams not getting along. Like, what should we go and do? And having that conversation. Thankfully, I mean, he's just like, I've been meaning to come over and have a conversation too. He's like, I know the answer. Like, we need to, probably like get the people that are having the most conflicts that are within our teams, like get us together and basically tell them like, cut it out, and so, I mean, how we actually moved past that and resolved some of it was back to what I've said last episode, this already today, of structure. We just started to make it very structured. And it's almost like going back and like what even like a security officer, a policeman or whatever does, and says, there's that phrase, by the book. Well, so sometimes you go and you're like, I know how to do this. I know the process, but things start getting disjointed, mishandled. It's not going the way that you'd hoped. It's like, let's go back and look at the guide. Let's go look at like the fundamentals of that. That's what the structured approach does, because it's so easy to get off topic of that, especially in this, you're trying to find a win-win situation. And if you go and say, look, this is what I'm trying to achieve, again, structured approach, it goes through around any negotiation. This is what I'm trying to achieve. This is what you're trying to achieve. Like, how do we get it so that we're both happy? Are you satisfied with that? And sometimes that means give and take. I'll stop there. I had another story, but I don't know, any thoughts on that, like structured approach?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I just believe this about everything in general, is the idea of if everybody understands, what game we're playing, if everybody understands what the rules are, then we all know when we break the rules, and we all know when we bend the rules, and we all know when we play by the rules, because we know what the rules are. And I think it's such an important thing when we think about cultural, management and team dynamics and conflict resolution and all those topics that come into making sure that everybody's working together, is if we all agree and understand what the rules are, we know who's playing by them and who's not.
Yeah. So there's the great example that I had when I was working with Hewlett Packard, many years ago. And I was working out of like the old down in Palo Alto, California, which is like very close to like the house where the garage where the company was started, like down in that region. It's where all the venture capitalists, the biggest ones in the world, are all there on Sand Hill Road, is right near there. Kind of a cool, exciting area, a very long commute across a bridge for me. But part of that was working with a senior business analyst. And I loved the style of going in, and especially when she had these outside groups. We worked with I was helping deploy some technology, and I traveled to other locations, was working with HP teams around the world and deploy this collaboration technology and stuff. And she would go through and explain, like almost like give a job description of like her role and her approach each and every time. And I heard it again and again and again, but it was like the same people multiple times. It'd be like an abbreviated version would go through and do that. But it was just a constant reminder of, again, that structure, that approach, and built into it was like, here's the way that we're going to move forward. Mm-hmm. And so it just invited people then to, like, within that, to know, here's where I need to go to her to ask questions. Here's like my piece of this. I know if she delivers this. But that was the beginning of what taught me, is that when you're working with, especially these massive OEMs like HP, like working with Microsoft, this was very true in the Microsoft ecosystem. And this relates to like working with partners and being a partner out in the field working with Microsoft, I'd always tell people, having been an employee and now working with advising companies that want to work with more closely with Microsoft, that the person you're talking with, you're connecting with, one of the first questions I would ask generically, it's not worded like this, but I would say, like, what are your key metrics? Like, what are you measured by? What are, and then usually then Microsoft people will tell you, like, here's my 3 things in 2025. We're doing this, this, and this. And it might be things, for those that are familiar with the space, might be like Azure consumption, Copilot licenses, and then 80% engagement on any licenses within those usage of those things. That's what they're measured on. That drives whether they get a bonus, whether they move up, like all those kinds of things. And so the secret to working with that person then is then to say, like, I can help you meet or exceed your goals. Here's how. So somebody that's approaching Microsoft wants to partner with, obviously they've had the selfish reasons, right? They want more leads, they want more business, they want better, like whatever it is that they're asking Microsoft for, that's a given. Anybody you're working with, you want something, they know you want something. You don't have to hammer them over the head with that. If you then focus, no matter where you are in this negotiation, if I, Sharon, come to you and I say, what are your goals with this? Like, what are the KPIs that you're really looking at for success of this project? And you say these 3 things. And I then cater my approach to you on helping you see how I can help you achieve or exceed those KPIs. What is your natural, your response to somebody that approaches that way?
I feel like we're in it together.
And I've not said anything about like what my items are, but like, that's probably where you go from there. And you say, like, I understand that, I can help you do that. And then you might ask in return, like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And like, well, these things. And you see, if I help you, Sharon, make it about you, and if you have that same approach, especially of trying to make it about me, we're both trying to help each other achieve our goals.
Right.
Then we're, one, it's a better working relationship, there. But there's some degree of that where you have to put what you're trying to do behind. If you want to achieve there, is you've got to shape it in the form of, Wonder Twin powers, shape of your accomplishments or your metrics. Out of water. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
take the analogy too far there, but yeah.
I used to say that, my job was to make my boss look good. Yeah. Right. That was my job. My job was not to accomplish my own goals. My job was to make my boss look good. My job was to make my company look good. My job was to make my team look good. My job was to make, my friends look good. My job was to make my employees look good. I don't care what it is. My job is to support the team in whatever way they need. Yep. And what I find is that when you do that and when you're a giver, that ultimately your own goals tend to get met, right? Because I have my own personal goals that I work on, but I also then, my job is to make my team look good. And my goals are within the structure of that goal. There's a really good book called The Go-Giver that talks about a sales mentality, really, of giving. It's not giving to get, but it's giving as a sales mentality to build relationships, because the goal isn't always taking, right? The goal is to give so that everybody wins together. And I really do believe in that. And I know, there's a lot of people sometimes be like, nobody's really that altruistic. And I'm like, you don't have to be altruistic to believe in a team mentality where you're helping other people to be successful. Right. And like you said, as long as the give and take is equal, right, then it's a healthy balance and it's a healthy relationship. And we in developmental psychology, we call this interdependent. What it means is we are both independent, but then we're choosing to help each other. Yeah. And it's a very healthy way of working together.
Well, and again, I think that's a great point. That's like, look, this isn't a negative thing. What, in my response to them, in asking you the question, like, what are your KPIs? What are you trying to do? And here's how I can do it. my wants, my numbers are built into my response of showing you. Like, so you don't have to hit people over the head with a hammer to get them to understand that you want something from them. Like that's implied with me coming to you. But if my focus is on helping you from that perspective, knowing that my needs are built into that, largely into that, if you ask me, and maybe I have one thing that I want out of this that there is not a reciprocal, but if I'm helping you achieve yours, you're then more willing to help me achieve all of mine, even the ones that don't impact those numbers. But it's you think about like the impacts of these things. If you're going in from that, again, I'm not a fan of the word toxic, but to use that word into a toxic negotiation where it's selfish, it's one-sided, you're looking to as I've done in the past, as a project manager, where I'm like, look, this is my project. That's all I care about. And I'm going to make sure that I deliver on that. And I'm burning those bridges there. It erodes trust between the various stakeholders, partners, the internal teams. It has ripple effects to that. When you are known, you get a reputation for steamrolling people is the phrase that's always used. Then it can strain the team dynamics. It can also mean that people give you unthought of, not well thought of, unrealistic commitments. They'd be like, I feel bullied into this. I'm going to give you a date. I have no intention of actually, hitting that date there, but you could also then overwork people. You can miss expectations pretty widely. So you have to be very careful about that. And it's, again, shocking for me to once again say to approach this clinically. I always took my approach as a project manager that, look, these are not my decisions. My job is I'm tracking the progress and the decisions that have been made by the stakeholders. They're your decisions as a stakeholder. And that I try to remove the friction and keep the data as up to date as possible. Like when you say, like my job as a direct report is to make my boss look good. And I would always say as a team lead, as a project owner, as a manager, my number one job is to unblock you.
Yep.
So to help you, is there what's in the way of you hitting the timeline and identifying those risks and managing from that respect. Like we said, it would take a week. We're now a month in. Where are we on this? What's going on there? What can I do to unblock you on those things? Again, if I'm helping you unblock you, that means you're then doing what I really want secretly all along, is hitting your dates, hitting your numbers.
Wow, you're so subversive.
It is. It's that's the it is. It does feel like kind of secret, spy-ish, subversive.
Convincing people to do the right thing by helping them. What a crazy, crazy idea.
Yeah. I was always say it's funny. I share stories about how, as a teenager, my mom would trick us into going and doing like service projects for people. And I always as a teenager, when you're like 14, 15 years old, you're angry that you got like railroaded to go and cut weeds down on this half-acre property for somebody, and then you get there and you do the service project for somebody, especially somebody in need, and you feel really good about that afterwards. Then you're angry at your mom for feeling good about doing service. Like, you tricked me into it. You get angry again somehow. Like, yeah, it felt good, and yeah, it was the right thing to do, and I should have not complained about it, but I'm still angry that you tricked me into this. Anyway, right. You feel kind of like that. But again, this is it impacts your culture when you, an individual, approach project this way, structured way of looking for that win-win. And you start then removing some of the layers of the unhealthy side, where you get like people are passive on things. No, they then willingly become active participants in the success of the project, because they see what they're getting out of it and they understand what you want out of it and what you're getting out of it as well. So
I see this all the time. So often I go in to help a team, and, you know, perhaps maybe I'm meeting with them to try to solve a problem. And over time, they've kind of gotten accustomed to exactly this, right? They've gotten accustomed to kind of every man for himself mentality, where this person's going after their goal and this person's out going after this goal. And they're just sitting there like, I mean, I know the project's going to fail, but there's nothing I can do about it because everybody's kind of running their own show at this point. And I can tell you, you know, firsthand, not even a specific story, but I can tell you that over and over again, when I come in and I really force people to get on the same page, get along, work as a team, help each other to be successful. And like you said, you know, I get involved and say, what problems are you having and how can I help you get rid of those problems? How can I help you eliminate the roadblocks? How can I help you make sure we're going to be on time? How can I make sure we're on budget? How can I help you to make sure that we're streamlining this? It's really interesting to me how you'll begin to see the team perk up, engage, and respond to that positive attitude, to that, you know, giving nature, is that they're so accustomed to not being given to you know, having to kind of take care of themselves that at first they're confused, and then they're like, wait, you're here to help me? Okay, yeah, I can get on board with this. And all of a sudden the team tends to kind of fold in and start helping each other. And I'm not gonna lie, like, this is the moment that just makes my heart happy. The moment that makes my heart happy is when everybody all of a sudden realizes we've all been pulling against each other. And if we just come together and work together, we can be more successful as a team. So yeah, I think it's visible. You can see it happen.
I'm just thinking of like kind of summarizing the pitfalls of the win at all costs. I'm just really kind of 4 areas.
We haven't talked about a lot of bad stuff.
A lot of things. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, so some of the pitfalls, like over-promising, so that wins you over the stakeholders, their buy-in, but without the cross-functional consultation. You're not hearing everybody's voices. So you're pushing it down from the top down rather than getting everybody on board and then identifying risks. You might be negotiating deliverables or timelines without thoroughly understanding the impacts, the budget, the capacity, other resource constraints, availability.
Chicken in every pot, Christian, and chicken in every pot.
Yes. The third one, undermining other team members or functional leaders that just to get an agreement across the line. Again, I've done that. Delivered on that, but then nobody wanted to work with me after that and had to go change to a different business unit. And then the last one is, which the one I think I see the most, is you sacrifice the quality, the supportability, the scalability of the solution just to hit the deadline. And I think in all of these cases, you don't have a clear understanding of really what are your KPIs, what are we trying to achieve there. And I do like how some organizations, and I want to jump into strategies for overcoming the issue, but I do like that some organizations have figured this out and they put as a KPI, and they might measure it different ways but of having kind of qualitative measurement in there of that we also did it, that we had like an employee cross-functional employee satisfaction score of a certain level or whatever. That means that, hey, we're working with them, not against them on getting this project completed. But what are some of your strategies for overcoming the issue besides like taking the structural approach, which we introduced earlier?
Yeah, as I said, definitely have a framework. But understanding yourself and your team, understanding what you're trying to accomplish, and having some sort of a tool or a way to know, like, what are you doing and how are you managing that and how are you keeping it under control? Or, I think it's really a lot of knowing yourself and understanding all of the different parts and pieces so that it's about variables, right? So I have a Six Sigma black belt, and one of the big things in Six Sigma is understanding variables. What I'm trying to say is you have to understand all of the variables that are associated with what you're trying to accomplish in some way. The people, the process, the scorecard, everything about it. Because at the end of the day, if you're only watching one variable, then other variables could be moving around like this. But if you are watching all the variables that at least are important, right, to this particular scope. If you move one and another one pops a lot, you know how to then manage everything appropriately, as opposed to only focusing on that one piece.
There's a reason why a lot of like startups, for example, will have advisory boards, and they will usually staff those advisory boards, whether free or paid, depending on your funding situation for these. But that advisory board based on where you're weak. So you're getting feedback. If like there's a lot of startups that are technical people that have come together and they're weak on the business side. So they may, have somebody, whoever's the CEO from the technical team, from the founders, have advisors that are CEOs that have had that experience, that are on the operations side. I mean, often, and I do it, I'm advisory on 2 startups right now where I'm the marketing person, that voice, because they're very technical. They're strong on the business side, but I'm the voice of the marketing voice of what to go and do, the chief marketing officer for these. So yeah, this is for me, like the probably the biggest strategy for this. And we just had this conversation yesterday with the client talking about, and Sharon brought me in on this conversation, this project, is having the discovery time, plenty of time built into the project plan to go through and have these cross-functional and multiple. I mean, when I say discovery, I'm not saying it's one meeting, we called it discovery and we're done, but that activity, which could be multiple meetings, so that you get all those perspectives, you understand the risks, and you have what should be a stronger than plan moving forward with all of those voices. And that's why, again, I've run governance bodies inside companies, and I've done it as a consultant to help organizations to build governance structure in. And this is exactly what it's all about, getting all of those voices, those perspectives in. Because I might have something, I'd say, I don't think this impacts all these other teams. And I've done this where I'm like, I propose, and here's what we're going to do. And it's a minor change of the system. And it was around a SharePoint server back in that day when my team owned a lot of those. And then I suddenly heard from these other constituents, these other stakeholders are like, whoa, wait a second. We use that in this way, like that piece of it, that no impact to you. Actually, it would change how we do it. Like, oh, I didn't realize that. Let's go and do this. We'll build an additional view with this data for you and do these other things. But have that. That's why I'm also, we've talked about like the postmortem at the end to review. That's another important part of this. But throughout, having a consistent communication strategy for the project is going to be, and then a way for people to provide feedback back. Those feedback loops, those mechanisms for people to voice their opinion and give concerns, risks, issues, questions, visibility into your planning, that lives the entire length of any project. You should be willing to listen to and be prepared for change to that plan of record based on those inputs. That should be part of your model, should be part of the culture.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
It's about, it like with anything, there's opinions, but you also, more importantly, want data. When you see actual usage, when you see, hey, we've done this, we've got the pilot version of this thing that we launched, we all agreed on, nobody's using it. Is it a training issue? Did we get something wrong? But you're having those discussions. Again, everybody needs to win. So kind of close things out, best practices, and then kind of call to actions with this. I always say that when you're going in, if you have a structured approach, part of that is setting those ground rules, saying, look, we want to, I'll commit when we can validate that this budget is real. If what you've said in this timeline, I'm looking for validation from the engineering team, from the delivery team, and for finance. And if they're all good, then we're agreed and we can move forward on this. But it's great to say at what point, like salespeople do this. What will it take for you to be driving out of here? Like, what are those numbers? Like that's actually a great example. Again, taking that clinical approach, just like the salesperson does at the auto dealership. what will it take? And you say, look, I will pay this much. If you can get within that with all the other factors, we've got a deal. Have that conversation up front.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing out of this entire conversation is it's transparency, it's honesty, it's integrity. It's not about, did we do it exactly the way that we wanted, or did everything go exactly perfectly? I think there's a lot of project managers that I've seen over the years that if they hit, under budget, on schedule, and within scope, then they're winning, right? And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, did we solve the problem, and did we do it in a way that the client expected, or the way that the team was trying to accomplish it? And I think the important part of this is, does everybody understand what we're trying to do, and does everybody feel good about what we accomplished at the end together? Because if that happens, then it really doesn't matter. It's a win, right?
Yeah. Do we not address any concerns? Like, don't hold back now any issues, any concerns.
Yeah.
And, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that somebody made a suggestion and you said, this is why we're not going to pursue that. Like, have that conversation. Like, there can be people which can be obstinate, be like, hey, I had this risk and I'm not happy with this because of this risk. Like, we discussed it. We told you why. That's a known issue.
And as a team,
right? As a team, this is why. And so again, that's something where you need to go and have conversations to make sure people, like, when we agree on a team and we document, when people know that there's a process and that they feel that they're heard, it's transparent, people will then have trust in that process. And even if they don't agree with the end result, I say this over and over again, but they will adhere to that process in that case and be okay. But like, I was heard, I get it. I may not agree, but
they'll either learn how to work within the confines of the boundaries that are being set, or they will exit the team, right? Yeah. That's typically what ends up happening, is that when you set the boundaries, you define the boundaries, you agree on the boundaries. If there is somebody who doesn't want to participate in that, they either learn how to participate or they exit the team. And neither of those are a bad thing.
Right. But this is all about changing it to a culture where there can be constructive conflict, and you learn to say no without damaging the relationship, burning those bridges with those stakeholders. So we can't. Here's why. It's an informed, a data-driven decision around this. It was discussed. Here's why we said no to this, and be able to answer that. So it takes time. I know sometimes you got to make decisions very quickly. And part of being a manager, part of being a leader is that you take the best data possible now, and you're making a decision, though, but ultimately with limited data. That's called leadership. And then there's risk inherent in those. You make the best decisions you can. But everybody on board, it's not then, oh, hey, the CEO, you made the bad decision. Like, oh, well, is that because you didn't provide sufficient data about what's going on? So again, it's not about pointing fingers at when things go south. It's saying that you're able to better handle that collectively if it was like a process, we agreed, it's a shared decision going forward.
And I think we have a session for this, but at the end, we talk a lot about the postmortem and understanding what we did right and what we did wrong, but also celebrate the completion. It's not just the win of did you do everything right, but the fact that you completed it as a team. And I think we have another session where I talk about, celebrating the wins, but don't forget at the end of everything that you do, whenever you wrap something up, to celebrate the effort that your team has put into that.
Yeah. I like the idea too, again, going back to that HP experience and kind of rephrasing that, start every negotiation, really ask, like, what are we trying to accomplish? What are we doing here? Do we know what the risks are? Like, what do we lose if, we don't agree on this thing? And then when with this decision that we agree on, is it sustainable? Is it something that's scalable, supportable, kind of all those different things? If you ask that each time in those negotiations, you take that framework approach, you're going to, again, doesn't mean you're agreeing with everything 100%, but you're going to be able to move much more quickly be more agile in your decision making, and there will be more trust in people know that I was heard, is visible, it's a transparent process. That's what you want.
Yep.
Well, with that, I know we're out of time, but thank you everybody for watching, paying attention to this. If you want to reach out to Sharon and I, you can find us out on the socials everywhere. If you just type our names in, you'll find lots of things, lots of content out there. Of course, all the back episodes are out on YouTube. If you go search for Project Failure Files, I think I have most things tagged with PFF as well. I don't want to know what other people are using that hashtag out in the world, but maybe it's safe. Of course, you can always go to projectfailurefiles.com, leave us a note. Please subscribe to the YouTube, follow along with the content, sign up for our newsletter. We'd love to hear more from everybody with your ideas, with your comments. And then other than that, we'll see you back here next Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, always at 9 a.m. Pacific. And Sharon, thanks a lot. Great to see you.
Bye, Christian.
Bye-bye. I thought I wanted to know. Now, Sharon, I think I just know.